Well, hello, everybody. I'm dialing in here from Silicon Valley. When Christine asked me to speak at this conference, I found it very hard to say no, even though this is one of my busiest weeks. But because I run an angel investment network investing in women, and I surely can't say to one of the most amazing women entrepreneurs, Christine. I've known her since her Singularity University days. I also love very much the theme of the conference today, which is accelerating people into the digital age. And the topic of my talk is going to be around the human dimension of tech. And I'll touch on 5 key elements. So you can check out my LinkedIn and you can see the 30 years of experience that I've had in tech. I've been one of the first women professional staff at the ITU, one of the first tech startups in Singapore. I ran an e-learning company, which I sold in 2006. Just to name many. But, so I hold the scars of being one of the few women in tech, which is why I'm very passionate about tech entrepreneurship for women. So on the next slide, just want to touch the first dimension that I want to talk to you is about gender equality in tech. Besides the fact that it is the right thing to do from a gender equality point of view, I want to add a different dimension to you to think about it. Women in tech actually add a lot of value to the conversation. Women enable innovations with a difference, often with a social purpose. And women do more with less. They're very, very capital efficient. So as angel investors, we love investing in women tech because data has shown that women can actually do 20% more revenue with 50% less capital. Women have founded companies in first round capital's portfolio, outperform companies performed by men by 63%. And yet, women still receive less than 2% of funding, and majority of them face issues of sexual harassment, assault in the tech field. The list of negatives go on, but I want to focus on the positives. There's a huge implicit bias that we all can play a part to get rid of, especially for women of color. And for example, when I ran my own company, the tech business, despite the fact that I had, clients like Cisco, I was unable to get funding. And while my male compatriots would get their funding. And so I just wanted to give a little dimension about changing this message. Did you know, for example, that tech was actually created by women and not men? Not the Steve Jobs, not the Bill Gates. It was women that were behind tech innovation. If you watch the movie Hidden Figures, you'll remember Black women calculating manually the trajectories were called computers. And when IBM built the first hardware, women were the one who created the software. As part of a secret World War II project, 6 young women programmed the first all-electronic programmable computer. And when the project was eventually introduced to the public in 1946, the women were never credited for their hard work. So computer science was always relegated to something that women could take care of, not men. And when money started coming in with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Unicorn Company, this relegated women even further. So I put it out to all the women here, boldly grab back, reclaim tech as our innovation, and boldly go and innovate. And for the men in the room, recognize we live in a phase right now. We need all hands on deck. And therefore, do not leave these amazing women behind. Okay, next slide. The second dimension of tech that I want you to be reminded of is that tech is but a tool. Tech can be used intentionally to build back better. Build back better is a term that the UN came up with, and how countries could rebuild themselves post-disaster, post-pandemics like COVID-19. Did you know that COVID has taken us back to levels of poverty 30 years ago? We have actually successfully halved extreme poverty, but now we're back to the levels 30 years ago. We definitely live in very strange times, and COVID has thrust us into the digital age. Virtual conferences like this, for example, was never the norm. Or people preferred to have face-to-face meetings, right? Today, even my 93-year-old mother and my father and my 87-year-old mother uses Zoom every Saturday to connect with the family all around the world. Yet COVID has also been like an X-ray machine, exposing all the inequalities in the world. Everyone witnessed the police brutalities to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor right in their room. And instantaneously, Black Lives Matter became a global phenomenon. It was amazing to see people all over the world stand up for racial justice. And we really cannot treat the climate crisis unless we work together as one united world. So while it's very tempting as geeks to be mesmerized by the tech and to think of the latest tech innovations, how you could be the next unicorn company, I do certainly hope you will also put in mind how you can use tech as a tool to build back better? Do you really want more of the same, this very extractive and greedy world that we have today? Or do you want to invest in intentionally building back better? And that's what we do at Angels and Impact. We invest in those who are looking at the UN SDGs. Lived experience makes the difference. The third human dimension I want you to keep note of is the dark side of tech. And I'm sure any of you who've watched the Netflix series Social Dilemma about the dark side, there is much about tech you should understand as you build the solutions. You should plan ahead and think of the consequences of the tech you launch. Tech can be used for manipulating and destroying our way of life. For instance, interfering with elections in democratic countries, deluging fake news to the point that people no longer trust scientists. How can we insist on ethics in tech? But instead of waiting for regulations, how can we, as founders of tech, be accountable to the greater good of humanity? Meanwhile, tech also pervades much of our lives today. Many countries are looking at using facial recognition, for example, for surveillance, even when it has been shown to be especially inaccurate for people of color. We find machine learning actual copies all the implicit biases of societies that are already in the database. Example, incarceration of people of color, leading to the conclusion that people of color are more likely to be criminals, and so identify them too quickly. And unless intentionally removed, machine learning will perpetuate and even increase its impact exponentially negatively on people of color. So should we be complacent about that? Or should we be at the cutting edge? With so much of police brutality and injustice, we need to have a clear intentionality to remove the negative consequences of tech before it harms people. The other issue I think we need to be mindful of is the widening gap between the digital haves and the digital have-nots. I too was once so mesmerized with tech, having been raised in Singapore, lived in Switzerland, lived in here in Silicon Valley. As I said, I'm dialing to you in from Silicon Valley. And so I was very mesmerized that tech definitely impacted lives, right? We had telemedicine, e-learning. But it was not till I lived in Indonesia where I realized the broadening divide of the digital divide. Now, mind you, I had actually been involved in bridging the digital divide when I was working at the ITU in the 80s and Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Internet Association in the 90s. But I kind of assumed we had overcome these issues, but really not. So I think this is something here in the US during COVID times, you actually see young children crouched outside McDonald's in their schools trying to get access. So this is an issue we still need to be mindful of. The next one, fourth dimension that I want to tell you, is that the tech is not so much about hard skills alone. In fact, it has made it a point where soft skills have become the hard skills of the future. When we talk tech and digital revolution, we often talk about coding skills. But many of us, when you ask yourself, what does it take to succeed in the tech industry? Bill Drayton, who came from McKinsey Consulting as the father of social entrepreneurship, have studied many companies around the world, came to the conclusion to be effective in this world, you will need to master the skills of empathy and teamwork, as well as leadership and driving change. In fact, in 2013, Google decided to test how their hiring and firing processes were working. Project Oxygen, they did. Shocked everyone. It turns out that the 8 most important skills at Google, STEM, came in the last. Topping the list was strong interpersonal skills, such as being a good coach, communicating and listening well, possessing insights into others, social awareness, empathy, critical thinking, problem solving, connecting complex problems. So here is something to think about, that those people who have these soft skills can, in fact, enter the digital revolution. It's not going to be all about those who have the hard skills of coding. Because actually the next digital revolution with robots and AI will take over menial and repetitive jobs. And there's much more room for us to be human. So think about that as you innovate and bring new solutions through. So the last but not least, I wanted to be able to tie all of this together. And can I have the last slide, please? The question would be, what is your MTP? What is MTP? The massive transformative purpose. So I want to tie all these human dimensions together and ask yourself, what is the formula of success? What is the recipe of success in the digital evolution as a startup founder? Well, the book I would highly recommend is the one written by Salim Ismail on exponential organizations, where he studied so many successful digital revolution companies and had some common principles that made them successful. And you can see in the slide, there's the left-hand side and right-hand side elements, such as staff on demand, leveraging assets. And he says you just need to have 4 of these different things to be an exponential organization. However, the key one thing that ties all the elements together at the top is the MTP, the massive transformative purpose of the business. This is the element that ties the rest together and is the key, the human dimension, the key to success. You have to what is it? Can you unlock a higher purpose that will pull at the strings of hearts of people and inspires them want to join you in your journey, to become your customers, to become your advocates, to give viral marketing for you and send the message out there? And if you combine this with 4 elements of the XO, you have the winning formula. For example, with TED, it was ideas worth sharing. With Google, it's organize the world's information. Tesla, accelerate the transition to sustainable transportation. It's about something a little bit greater. It's almost like a something that really inspires you to want to wake up and be part of this movement. So I'm going to ask you, have you got your MTP? Do you understand what it makes to people tick in this new norm that we live in? People are more and more afraid of the rising fascism and the climate issues. Are you addressing a solution that makes them want to get up in the morning and join you? Are you working on an MTP that makes you want to get up in the morning and work on it? So the last thing I would say to you at Angels of Impact, our MTP is to create a world without poverty in unity with women. So I thank you very much, and I hope I've left you with some angles of the human dimension of tech to think about, and that will keep that at the center of all you do. As founders of tech, it's very, very easy to want to be the next unicorn and get into the sexiness of the tech industry. But a lot of investors today, especially angel investors, are funding people who are offering real solutions to real problems that will help many, many lives.